Another place where I think many of us think that the Constitution leads one way and the Supreme Court has gone another, there's the issue of voting and the right to vote. And I'm going to ask Greg, because I think this is, a very important question as we're talking about fixing democracy. It's not just the Shelby County decision, although that one is very significant, that really handicapped the Voting Rights Act and made it much, basically a shell of its former self in terms of protecting the right to vote, particularly for people of color in this country. So, Greg, I'm going to ask you, is this the place? Do we add a piece of this amendment on the 28th Amendment? Should it include a right to vote? Is this the right place? Should the amendment do more than one thing? How are you thinking about this?
Well, first of all, thank you for being a part. Can you hear me okay? For being a part of this effort. And I was here last year, and we were in the middle of a campaign. I think Jeff remembers. I dragged myself out of Ohio in September 30th, I think, because I felt that we really had to do everything we could so that this right to vote and our rights could be protected in so many areas we care about. Because of the results of the 2016 election and what we're experiencing now, I think this question, Caroline, becomes even more important, because not only Shelby decision, but we saw what just happened with the Husted APRI decision, where they basically strengthened the ability of secretaries of state and state forces to make it easier to remove people from the rolls. Now that's important, because if you look at the kind of numbers we're talking about, it could be a couple 100,000 in Ohio, it could be 1 million in California, it could be 500,000 in a state like Pennsylvania, because these are the people who are most vulnerable to these rules and regulations that make it sometimes hard to exercise that right to vote. So when you have a series of decisions like the Husted v. APRI and the Shelby v. Holder decision, you begin to realize that we're already at the other side of what we can expect from any really good litigation. And we've had some of the best litigation going on in this country on voting rights that I've ever seen, and I think that's a good thing. But if you look down the road further, you begin to see that this 5-4 majority, which I believe is conservative, can easily become 6-3. It could easily become, in an 8-year term of this administration, even worse. And so this becomes a moral imperative that the right to vote is equally as important as protecting the rights of people in the midst of this onslaught of money into our politics. The key point to me is that I always felt, let's do 2 amendments. That's what I've been sort of chatting with Jeff and others about as we go through this process. But if it looks like it's something that we need to put in almost an omnibus type of a package, I think it's important that we talk about how we can possibly create a democracy amendment that will protect the rights of the voters and protect the rights of the people as this process goes forward. Now, the NAACP was created 109 years ago at the turn of the century, before we had the right of women to vote. And so constitutional amendments, don't always come easily. And I think I was 11 years old or so when the last amendment was passed and young people got the right to vote. I became a student activist, actually, as a result of that in the early 80s, and began to spend a lot of time mobilizing people to vote, people 18 to 21 years old. But had that not happened, had people not put the energy toward making that happen in the follow-up from the anti-Vietnam War movement, we would be in a situation today where 18 to 21-year-olds couldn't even express themselves in this democracy. So we know that those kinds of things take a lot of work, and I would hope that we could build this convergence between people who care about money in politics and the role it plays, and people who care about the right to vote, to put those on equal footing, and let's try to see if we can put some language together that can accomplish both things.